Good morning, everyone. It's a fairly sunny day here in Binghamton. You know, I talk about the weather a lot because it's so fascinating. I know we all find it fascinating because the first thing you say to people is, how's the weather where you are? Well, in Binghamton, it's cold, but it's sunny. Tom just took the dog out. It's going to be a good day. Today, on Smart Women Conversations with me, Yvonne DiVita, I have a really special guest. And she is a friend from very long ago. I mean, we're pushing the double digits here, and I'm a fan. So, folks, I'm a fan of this lady. In fact, we're going to talk today about something that you probably don't think very much about, but we all have a blind spot in our lives and even in our businesses. I mean, it could be holding you back. Do you even know that you have it? Do you recognize it? It's kind of like driving down on the highway and you're getting ready to go in that other lane and you look at your mirrors and you go over and somebody beeps at you because they were in your blind spot and you didn't see them. We're going to talk about that today with Holly Buchanan from Buchanan Marketing. And back in the day, Holly, we're going to mention this, but back in the day, this is where we come from. Holly was the co-author on the Soccer Mom Myth. Great books, still useful, still something that you should buy. Holly, welcome to Smart Women Conversations.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's, wow, it really has been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Like double digits.
But we never lose touch, and that's a really good thing, isn't it?
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
going to tell them a little bit more about you because I want them to know why you're here today and how important you are, because you are. Holly Buchanan is a popular speaker, author, and consultant. She's the author of Selling Financial Services to Women, What Men Need to Know, and Even Women Will Be Surprised to Learn. She is the co-author of The Soccer Mom Myth. She's working on her new book, Stop Getting Triggered: How to Keep Your Cool, Win Respect, and Increase Influence Using Verbal Aikido. And Holly, first of all, thank you for writing books. I tell women all the time, I tell the smart women I meet, please write more books. Write a book if you haven't written a book. I'm so excited that you're writing books, but you're very, very busy doing things like helping people figure out what that blind spot is. So tell us what it is, first of all, and you know how it's impacting our credibility in what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, we all have a blind spot. You talked about the car situation where something happens and we did not get the result we expected.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever done maybe a business pitch and you thought it went really well and you didn't get the business?
Yeah.
Or, you know, you met with someone, you're having a conversation, and out of the blue, they like have a reaction, and you're like, what happened there, right? Right.
Yeah.
And it's important in our personal lives and in our business lives, because that disconnect between how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us has a huge effect on our ability to prospect, to work with clients, or to even retain clients.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me just start with a quick story, because I think it's really relevant. I do a lot of speaking, and I do a lot of work with financial advisors. And I spoke at a conference, and a woman came up to me afterwards, Sandra, and she said, I had a situation where I met with an elderly couple. They had been referred to me. And she thought the meeting went great. And she thought she was going to get the business. But she found out a couple of weeks later, they chose to work with a different advisor. Well, about 6 months later, the husband has a heart attack and dies.
Oh, geez.
And the first thing the wife does is pick up all the money and moved it to Sandra. So she said, clearly, I did a great job of connecting with the wife, but what happened with the husband?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, I guarantee you, it was a credibility issue. You did not win credibility with him. So we talked about what her blind spots could have been, and made some adjustments that were ultimately very helpful to help her be more successful. She actually changed her intake process when she was meeting with clients. She actually built in credibility builders, especially for men who were considering hiring her. And I'll share a little bit later specifically what we did, but because she uncovered a blind spot and actually took action, she was much more successful because of it.
Well, that's a very interesting story. I really like that story. I can relate to it, by the way. So when we look at our, let's say either our startup or our small business, or we're just a little gal selling jewelry on Etsy. But we also go to the fairs and the craft shows where we see people face to face. And how would you help someone understand like the body language maybe? Is that, I mean, and also, is this something that involves appearance? So the appearance of your booth at a craft show, what you wore that day, are those things important when we're thinking of how we relate to the client, and how in our blind spot we think, well, you know, I'm an artist, so I'm going to wear all these big colors and big thing or whatever, and the people coming by are like, no, we don't like that. So how do you wrap that in?
Right. Well, I would say two things on that. One, people are going to make an instant judgment about you.
Yeah.
Like if you've studied neurology, I'm a big fan of Daniel Kahneman. Thinking Fast and Slow was one of his more popular books about how we make decisions and how quickly the brain makes an instant decision about people.
Right.
So to your point, it is important what you wear, what you say, how you present yourself. So my big thing is, you know, what is the presence you want to convey?
Okay.
And it must be authentic. Because here's the other thing. If you're normally maybe, you know, I'm going to wear my bright flowery clothes and that's who I am, but gee, I want to be taken seriously. So I'm going to wear a very, you know, fitted classic suit, and that's not you, that's not going to work. So you really want to bring your authentic self, but be purposeful in how you present yourself. Like one big thing that I see that especially women do is we don't take up conversational real estate.
Interesting.
Yes. Amy Poehler from Saturday Night Live talked about the writing room.
Write that down.
And she said the men, like, they talk and take up all this real estate. And she say the women, when they speak up, they talk really quickly. Have you ever seen a woman let you know you're talking really quickly because you just know, oh my gosh, you know, you don't have much time. I want to get all this information to you as quickly as I can before you walk away. And you lose credibility. So one thing that I train people on is, especially when you're making an important point, slow down, enunciate. Practice the power of the pause.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Because you come across as very confident.
Yeah.
So whether you're selling jewelry at Etsy, or you're selling software, or you're a writer looking to promote your book, you don't have to talk this slow all the time. But when you hit that important point,
yes.
So, you know, think Martin Luther King, I have a dream.
Absolutely.
So just be aware of not talking too fast and slow down for your important points. Like something as simple as that will lend you an air of confidence.
And it's a practice, but it's also a recognition that you're in this group setting and you have something to share. Share it so people will listen. One of the things that I don't remember where I learned it, but I remember reading that people will lean in to listen to you if you have a softer or whisper voice rather than if you're shouting at them. I mean, so I don't want women to talk softly and not be heard, but to the point of, why shout? Why go so fast no one's able to keep up? And I will tell you, my granddaughter, and I've mentioned this before, but she's such a delight. She's 8 years old. She can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And it's like, I marvel at her. And I think, she just assumes I'm listening and I know what she's talking about. And I just pretend that I am because I'm her grandma. But the reality is, she, with all her wonderful confidence, we want to keep that with her, but we want to teach her to use it properly.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe she has a blind spot.
Yes. Yes. And so, the women that I'm working with, I'm going to explore this concept of blind spot, but how do you recognize your blind spot? Where do you finally say, oh yeah, that was a blind spot. I now know what that is, or how does that happen?
Right. Well, that's the problem. It's a blind spot, right? You are blind to it. You don't realize because you think, I come across this way. You know in your head how you want to come across and what you're thinking. But people will always, we get people wrong all the time. We make instant judgments, we stereotype. So you know what's going on in your head and your heart, and you think that that's being conveyed, and it's not. So how you uncover your blind spot is really simple, but not easy, which is you ask for feedback.
Interesting.
This is not for the weak. I do it. I do a lot of speaking. I get, the forms back. I talk to people. But like an example from my own life about my blind spot and how I uncovered it and what I did. I was working for an internet marketing company, and I was one of the first employees, and we grew rapidly. So they created a new position, the head of the consultants. And so they pulled all the consultants in one day and said, great news. We're creating this new position and we're giving it to Anthony. Well, after that meeting, at least 2 of my fellow consultants came up to me and said, we can't believe that position didn't go to you. So my boss obviously also kind of knew something was up. So he pulled me into his office and he said, look, we absolutely considered you. But kind of 2 things. One, we didn't think you wanted the job. And first I'm like, deer in headlights. Then it's the golden retriever head tilt.
Yeah.
But then, that led to a conversation. And I will be forever grateful that my boss was honest with me about a disconnect between how I thought I was coming across and how I actually was. And I actually changed some of the way that I did business. Like one very specific feedback was they said your reports are too long. Like you need to be more like Anthony. And I'm like, Anthony's reports are like 9 PowerPoint slides. And they said, exactly. They're like the C-level, that's what they want. They want the executive summary. My reports were like phone books. And I'm like, but they're getting their money's worth. But they're like, present more like Anthony. I'm like, okay. So I went in and did the short slides, executive summary. What a difference. So yeah, it's ask for feedback.
Yeah, the feedback is so crucial, and you need to ask the right people. You can't ask someone who's just going to say, but that was great. I love it. I don't have anything. You need to find someone who's going to be honest with you, but kind, and not just, oh geez, it was so awful, why would you. I really do think that when I coach people who write books, I want them to have readers, and I want them to understand that the reader is not their editor. The reader is there to help them connect with the reader who is ultimately going to have the book in their hands.
Yes.
And so that's where an author sometimes has a blind spot, in kind of similar to your story, where I know what they need to know, and that's what I'm going to write. And we need to find out, well, maybe they do need to know that, and maybe you can present that, but they're over here asking you for this instead, right?
Yeah, yeah. And a big, because you're bringing up some important points. When you're asking for feedback, do give them permission to be honest.
Yes.
And if you don't like it, you can't poke back at them. Like, give them permission. I give you permission to be honest. And if it's negative or you don't agree with it, you still have to just sit back and listen. You can't have a negative knee-jerk reaction. The second part of that is people are not good at giving feedback. So you have to be specific.
Yes.
Say, you know, and right afterwards, like after meetings with clients, I would say to some of my colleagues, was there anything specific I could have done differently in that meeting? And try to give them, you know, so in the presentation that I did, was there any point where you saw people's body language that they were disengaging? So when you're asked, the more specific you can be, the better. And finally, on that point, different people will have different feedback. Like for readers, for my new book, Stop Getting Triggered, I very carefully chose about 4 very different people to read it. And I got extremely different feedback from the 4, but I did it purposefully.
Yeah.
Because I know these are kind of the 4 personas that might be reading this book. So that's the other thing with feedback. Realize that, you know, different personality types and different people are going to see different things.
I love that, the persona. So let's talk about persona. So your persona, mine, yours, the individual person's persona is, it's one thing, and there's a great deal, part of it is how we perceive ourselves, as you said. Then there's the persona of the people you're asking the feedback from. So giving speeches, for instance, I'm not a great public speaker. I don't like to be on stage. I'd rather write the speech for somebody else. But in the end, I like that you said you had 4 different personas, different kinds of people who had different, perhaps, expectations of what the content was going to deliver to them. And we need to recognize that that's a big world out there. You know, if you're an author, you don't know who might pick up that book and how relevant it might be for them. So it would be great to have different personas and think carefully, as you said, choose carefully.
Yeah.
If you're a speaker, you know, get feedback on your speech. You may know who the audience is. I would have hoped that if you're speaking, that you asked who the audience is.
Yeah, but you know, actually, a lot of people don't. I'm sure you've run across that in your work with Blog Pause and working with speakers. A lot of times they don't ask about the audience. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and that's very interesting to me. Not asking. I can remember a Blog Pause. I had a new doctor because we had just moved to Colorado, and she said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a pet blogger." And she said, what do pet bloggers blog about? And I'm like, pets. Why would you say?
Skincare. Skincare, that, of course.
And so there was that, it was like, what do you say about pets and how do you do that? And that was a big part of Blog Pause, is us constantly explaining what our bloggers wrote about. But you're right. And that's something I learned a long time ago, is ask who the audience is. But even when you know, to this point, even when you know the audience is pet bloggers, wow, that's a big diverse group of people.
Absolutely.
So you need to get this feedback from different elements of them. So the cat bloggers are different than the dog bloggers. So ask the cat bloggers, are you making the right points? Ask the dog bloggers, do they understand? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so from your experience working with people and teaching them the blind spot, what happens, for instance, is this a presentation that you give? Is this something you come in for a company to teach their sales force, or how does that work?
Yeah, I do presentations and workshops. I do a lot of work with the financial industry, so financial advisors, because that's a profession where trust and credibility matters so much. So having that blind spot uncovered. Yeah, so I just kind of go through, here are some, in general, here are some blind spots that people have. In general, you can do up to 4 different personas. I talk about 2 personality types in my presentations, just to say, hey, just even if you don't know who's sitting in front of you, I said, because you never want to make assumptions or guess.
Yes.
When you're meeting with a prospective client, never guess as to what they want or what they're thinking. Like, that's going to go wrong in so many ways. But I say, in general, here are 2 personality types. So just walk through your process, looking at it through the eyes of each type, and then build in trust and credibility builders based on the understanding of these 2 kind of opposite decision-making styles.
So here, I read this earlier when I was doing it. I want to read it again because I want you to talk about it. Selling financial services to women, what men need to know, and even women will be surprised to learn. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What would we be surprised about?
Yeah, well, there's this way of thinking that women know what women want.
But then we get this.
Right, so that, we know better. I mean, to think that women are this monolithic group, that we all think and act the same way. And even though I talk about selling to women in both of my books, I at least break it down into, again, 4 personas. Because we stereotype women so much. And there's this feeling of, well, if it's a woman and it's a fellow woman, she's going to do a better job of selling to a woman. And that is not the case.
Right.
So that's why, again, I try to talk about women can have a blind spot.
Yeah.
And women are very judgmental of other women. And that, boy, does that kind of sneak out into conversations.
So I'm going to throw this out there because I think it's still common. You get the little old lady. I mean, and it's hard to say that today because I'm the age of the little old lady we used to talk about, but I feel like I'm a little old lady. But you get the woman who has been either a homemaker most of her life, worked maybe part-time. Her husband was the major breadwinner. She really didn't do anything except manage the household grocery bill and utilities. And something happens to him, and she's like, I don't know where anything is, right?
Right. Yep.
And so if you were to speak to that couple before anything happened, and if you were a woman, you best not look at her like she's not important and she's not very smart just because she only takes care of these things, right? I mean, is that a blind spot you immediately might have? I can see it happening.
Yeah, and so one of the things I talk to financial advisors, both men and women, is we tend to gravitate towards whoever's doing the most talking and assume that they are the major decision maker. But what happens a lot to your example, if it's maybe an older, more traditional couple, he's asking all the questions. She's sitting back and let him ask the questions. So the advisor focuses on him. When they leave the office and the husband turns to his wife and says, so what did you think? And she says, I don't like him, or I don't trust her. Boom, dead in the water.
Yeah. That's
so, yeah, so be aware that just because someone maybe isn't participating as much does not mean they don't have a major say in the final decision.
Well, and wouldn't you then advise the woman to engage the person who's not giving I mean, whether it's a man or a woman, generally, so far it's a woman. Because I'll give an example. I am not big on financial things. I want to hide everything in the mattress. And Tom says, no, we can't do that. So we have a financial advisor, and she's wonderful because we told her, I'm not good with numbers, and she still brought me into the conversation repeatedly. She presented slides and presentations that were designed for people like myself, not designed for women, designed for people like myself who weren't comfortable with numbers. And she really explained it. And so I love her. Do I remember anything she showed me? No, I don't. But I really appreciated that.
Yeah, so it sounds like whatever she did, she built trust with you.
Yes.
Like she included you, she built trust with you. And that can be, yes, simply including to you, whether it's men or women. And by the way, like, this is why you want a woman in the room. A lot of times the couples, the man will not admit if he doesn't know something. Like, you'll say, have you heard of annuities?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy will be like, oh yeah, I know what an annuity is. Yeah, sure. And the woman is like, I got nothing. I got no idea what an annuity is. He doesn't know, but she's sometimes more willing to say. So when explaining it to her, he's going to get it. But the other thing, and this goes back to the blind spot, is the questions that you ask are so important. So, whether it's your advisor or someone else, we send messages of judgment and shame around money all the time.
Yeah.
Like one thing that advisors do is they'll sit down, they'll show you the pie charts, the graphs, whatever, and then they look at you and say, does that make sense?
Right.
And so I said to advisors, does anyone raise their hand and say, that made no sense, I'm a complete idiot, I didn't get that at all? No, they kind of go, yeah, okay. And I'm like, so do not, after an explanation, say, does that make sense? Because what you're saying is, hey, did I do a good job of explaining that?
Right.
Pat me on the back. Did I do a good job of explaining that? So I'm like, after you explain something, I'm like, stop and just make eye contact and say, what questions do you have?
Yeah.
And then give them permission. Like I say with anyone, if you're having a meeting with a prospective client, you want to say, I don't want you to leave here with a question in your head.
Excellent.
Right? I love questions. Like, make it safe for them. And do not ever, ever say, there are no stupid questions. Like, because the person might be thinking, I thought my question was actually pretty smart.
Right.
So again, another common thing,
Right.
There are no stupid questions. No, do not say that. Say, I love questions. And so I talked to a female advisor who's very successful. And what she says is, you're going to ask me the same question 11 times. And that's okay. We're going to talk about it. You're, like you were saying, you don't really remember. You leave my office, a little while later, you're going to ask the same question. She said, you can ask me the same question 11 times. The 12th time, I'm going to have a problem. But so she makes it safe. So I say, if you're prospecting or even with existing clients, do not say, does that make sense? Do not say there are no stupid questions. Just say, I love questions. I'm open. It's okay.
I love it. I love it. And your point that we are judgmental about, financial services and money and how we deal with money. And I mean, you talk about it. It's one of those subjects that, oh, you're going to talk about that. I can tell you right now that in the meeting with the financial advisor, she was showing us some charts and graphs and things. And I can't remember what she said about them, except I may have interrupted her and said, I have no clue what all of that is. And to her credit, she stopped, she went back, and she took the time to explain it.
Yep. And
to pause after each chart or graph or whatever, say, is that good? Are you understanding? What questions do you have? How can I, help you with this? And she was actually so calm about it, and she didn't give me the sense that I was A, stupid, or B, wasting her time, because she knew she
Yes.
could talk to Tom and he understood it all. She just really made me feel like, I want you to understand this before you leave my office.
Yep. But again, that's a blind spot a lot of professionals have, because it's the curse of knowledge. Chip and
Yes.
Dan Heath talk about that in Made to Stick, a fabulous book, by the way, that we know it so well. We don't understand what it's like to approach this with a beginner's mind.
See, that's what I tell people when they're giving anything, a webinar or a speech or a presentation, to really treat the audience like they're kindergartners. Because the reality is, the people who already know it are patient enough to let you go through the stuff that's the kindergarten stuff. And then when the kindergarten people are like, wow, that's great. And then they'll understand when you go forward. But never assume people know. Never assume that, as you said, that what you know is, and I do that. I am very guilty of it. And I do catch myself, but I am guilty of it. I look at things and I go back and say, somebody asks a question, I'm like, oh, I thought everybody knew that. I thought that was so common. I thought the whole world knew that. They don't.
Yep. Yeah. But
Right?
that's why it's so important to create the atmosphere of, I love questions.
Yeah.
And don't say there are no stupid questions. I love questions.
Right.
Like one advisor was giving a workshop, and he worked with a lot of women. And at the beginning of the workshop, he stood up and he said, I find that women need more explanation. So afterward, I sat down with him and I said, we're going to change that. I said, here's a better way to say what you're trying to say. He had a blind spot about the fact that rubbed some women the wrong way. I said, the next time you give the workshop, you're going to say, I find that women ask a lot of really smart questions.
Yes.
They ask questions that a lot of the times the men won't ask. And I love that. And I could see in the audience completely different reaction. So he just had a blind spot. I knew what he was trying to say, but with just simply rewording it. And that's a lot of the work that I do with people in their business presentations, to say, here's what you're saying. I know what you're trying to say. Here's how it might be coming across the wrong way. Here's a better way to say it.
And that's wonderful. We're coming to the end of our time, and I really think we've explored the blind spot fairly well. However, I hope when your book comes out, I want people to get it, and I will share with everyone where you can find Holly online. You do write a blog, right, Holly?
At the moment, I'm on a bit of a hiatus because I am finishing up the new book, Stop Getting Triggered. It's the other workshop I'm doing, which is all about the difficult conversations and how do you stay calm and cool and actually go with versus push against your conversation partner. So that's taking up all my time right now, but that's going to be out hopefully this year. But that's for another day, another conversation. But
yes, please let's stay in touch, so when the book is out, I can get a copy and we can talk about it, because I think that's another really important thing for women to learn. Use of women and men. So let's just be I'm the one who's after the women's market.
Right.
But the reality is, so many women could speak better, and if they did, it would give them confidence.
Yeah, and women, there is a double standard. A guy gets, emotional and, oh, he's just passionate. A woman gets, angry or emotional, and they're like, oh, she's over emotional.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that men and women are coming to the workshops and getting a lot out of it. But I think especially as women, to say how you can keep your cool. And these conversations is like, I use it every day.
Yeah.
I use these techniques every day. So
well, I'm going to put this out there for you as an idea. This particular topic would be fabulous for couples who are in business together.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Tom and I don't speak the same language. Yeah, we've been in business together now for so long. Right now, he's doing something different than I am. But Blog Pause, the publishing company I had, we did it together. But there were challenging times, and we're we love each other, and so we got through it. But I think having something like that, if we had been able to come to a workshop, perhaps that on that particular topic, it would have been great, because I did struggle, and sometimes I still I use the pause. I use the pause a lot, because it's like, let me pause and think carefully so I don't blurt out something I shouldn't.
Yeah, it's all about how do you mindfully respond and not mindlessly react.
Exactly. And people are people. You have the emotions, women especially. I prove that women have emotions, but let's learn how to be useful, speak well, get our point across, and not always have our back up or be hiding in the corner.
Yeah, and men too. Like I'm going to call out the guys too, because I think because sometimes they feel freer to express their emotions, that they don't understand how they come across.
Exactly.
Especially in management, the bad bosses, like you never hear the end of it, and they're completely clueless. They're like, oh, my people love me. And I'm like, no, your people don't love you. Here's what you're doing. Here's how it's coming across. You gotta, get some self-control. So, equally applicable for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So Holly, this was wonderful. And definitely when the next book is out, let me know. I'll pre-order it or whatever, and we'll do this again.
It sounds great.
Awesome.
Take care, sweetie.
Thanks. This is Yvonne DiVita for Smart Women Conversations. We'll see you next week.